Now at 5 o'clock, remembering Bob Knight and a Hall of Fame career highlighted by 3 national titles at IU, one that is unmatched to this day, a championship that capped an undefeated season. As iconic as he was controversial.
A shrine now grows outside of Assembly Hall where thousands of fans pay respects to the man known as the General. Our entire news team has been working this coverage for you today. And let's start with Cody Fisher, who's live outside of Assembly Hall. Cody, you've spent today on campus.
Guys, some of Coach Knight's most biggest accomplishments happened just through these doors here at Assembly Hall. And now fans are honoring those accomplishments outside of Assembly Hall with flowers and, of course, a chair. For nearly 3 decades, the sound of Coach Knight yelling at a referee was commonplace inside Assembly Hall. But on Wednesday night, before an exhibition for IU women's basketball, public address announcer Jeremy Gray told fans in attendance that sound would never again be heard inside this iconic gym.
It was as quiet as I have ever heard that building, including when I walk in there alone.
In some ways, Gray says Coach Knight transcended the game of basketball.
Maybe viewers of yours who are under the age of 35 or so don't understand the magnitude of what he meant, but there are very few genuine crossover celebrity coaches in the history of American sports. I put names like Knute Rockne, Bear Bryant, Vince Lombardi on the list. Bob Knight's on that list. I actually don't know if there is an active coach that would be on that list.
People of all ages have come to pay homage to the man who brought banners to Assembly Hall.
I wasn't even born when he was a coach.
When junior Tyler Kunkel got the news, he immediately called his parents who attended IU in the 90s.
My mom started crying. She was really upset. I tried to help her feel better, but he was a big part in their lives. It's unfortunate, but I wasn't born early enough to be around when he was coaching.
Jerry Boswell Dyke was around when Bob Knight was coaching. Knight's death sparked a memory of a game he took his mom to.
Picked up the tickets and they said ordered by Knight on the tickets. We ended up sitting right behind the bench for what was quite possibly one of the worst games ever at Assembly Hall. We heard the full spectrum of the Bob Knight coaching, let's just say it, that night. I mean, he was very, very colorful.
That colorfulness is one of the reasons the legacy of Coach Knight is a complicated one. He was never one to mince words, and his temper is as legendary as his coaching. But make no mistake about it, his legacy will forever flow through the veins of Indiana basketball.
There has not been a figure in basketball in the state of Indiana that mattered more for as long as Bob Knight did. And I do think that he is a huge driving force of why basketball is just a little bit extra in this state.
Now, one of the ways that IU Athletics is going to be honoring Coach Bob Knight this season is with a patch of his initials on every single player's jersey, both men's and women's. But there's a news conference coming up at 6:30, and I'm going to be in that room to see if IU Athletics and the university have any other ways that they're going to commemorate the legendary coach. Reporting in Bloomington, Cody Fisher, Wish TV, my teammate.
Thank you, Cody. We continue our team coverage with News 8's Richard Essex.
He spent today talking with one of Coach Knight's legendary players, Steve Alford.
Well, obviously his health has been declining, so I saw him about a month ago. He wasn't doing very well, so it wasn't really communicative. It was more, I've got to see Pat, his son, spent about 3 hours in the home and see Pat, and that was a lot of reflecting, and I think it was helpful, hopefully helpful for Pat. It was definitely helpful for me.
Steve Alford knew in the 3rd grade that he wanted to be a Hoosier. He committed to Coach Knight's program his junior year in high school.
Well, my first interaction was in 3rd grade. I started going to his camps from 3rd grade all the way through 12th grade. So my dream, every workout I did on the driveway or at Newcastle Fieldhouse, it was preparing myself to hopefully be good enough that he would be interested in me. And then when I committed to him prior to my junior year, that was the most special moment. He called my dad. Dad pulled me out of the cafeteria and said that Coach had just called and had offered me a scholarship and wanted to know what I wanted to say. And I said, obviously it's yes. And, my dad's like, I figured that, so I already told him that, so I don't have to call him back. So it was always about when Coach was ready to make that commitment, I'd already made that commitment.
Alford entered Indiana University in the fall of 1983 with high expectations from Coach Knight and the university. He would play for Coach Knight on the 1984 Olympic team. He eventually led the Hoosiers to a national championship in 1987. His three-point buzzer beater at the half sent the team up by 1 going into the locker room. He said Coach Knight was a teacher first, and the lessons Alford learned he is passing down to his players at Nevada.
Well, hopefully a lot. One's notebooks. We had notebooks at Indiana because he told us we were another class. He was a professor teaching basketball. And just like he expected us to be on time, attend every day, work hard, work with energy, work with diligent discipline. He expected that no matter what other class we had, biology, math, English, whatever it was. And so we learned. I saw him kick players off. I saw him suspend players for not attending class or doing what they were supposed to do academically. And so it didn't matter to Coach how it was going to affect the team. You were going to be a student before you were an athlete. And I think that's why the vast majority of his players have graduated.
Alford spent a couple of years in the NBA. He started coaching college basketball in 1991. He faced Coach Knight as the head coach at Iowa. The relationship with Alford, the coach and the university, was viewed as frosty at the time.
No, because I think a lot of that was blown way out of proportion. I think it had to do when I was at Iowa and he was at Indiana and we were in the same league. And so it was the media of the Big Ten. And, then obviously things started happening, unfortunately, in Indiana. And then there was all rumors here, rumors there. And we talked quite a bit during those times. And he knew where I was. He's always known where I was with my respect for him, my love for him. It's unconditional. And I wanted Coach Knight to be at Indiana forever.
Alford scored more than 2,400 points at Indiana, but he tells me he got much more than that from his coach. In Indianapolis, Richard Essex, Wish TV.
And Bob Knight's legacy stretches outside of IU. In the heart of Nashville, Indiana, there's a small diner just a few miles away that was cherished by the legendary coach.
We get that part of our team coverage from News 8's Camila Fernandez, who spoke with the owner this afternoon.
I just hope that everybody remembers him as a person who was able to bring a team together.
This place isn't your regular diner. Step inside our sandwich place located in the heart of Nashville, and you'll find it bleeds the color crimson. At the center is legendary Indiana University basketball coach Bob Knight.
It's really been an honor because there's so much history here. He and the original owner were really good friends.
That friend is Larry Hawkins, who started the business about 50 years ago. Every corner is filled with unique memorabilia and some personal photos of the general. Wendy Ellen Magana is now the owner, and before that, her mom, Cheryl Ferguson.
We have a lot of photos all around the restaurant that you're not going to see anywhere else because they were brought into the original owner as part of their friendship.
Coach used to come here a couple times a week. I'm told that he had breakfast at Cloverdale, and Bloomington, and came here, and there was a table up front, and Coach and Larry would sit there and gossip.
There's a large picture of Knight with the 1973 Hoosiers team as NCAA finalists. Magana says in this corner of the diner is where Knight would eat with his family. There's even a chair with his name on it, surrounded by pictures of him and friends that are now part of his memory.
We want everybody to know that they can come in and look at the pictures and they can enjoy the history behind them.
They say they are thinking about his family.
We were all very lucky to have him in our world, and I know they're sorrowing right now, and I'm very sorry.
Magana says she plans to continue to celebrate Bob Knight's legacy with the community for years to come. I'm Camila Fernandez for Wish TV, wishtv.com, and like us on Facebook.
We turn now to Sports Director Anthony Calhoun.
And see, Bob Knight was a legendary coach, of course, had an impact on so many, including others in his profession.
Yeah, you're right about that. We talked about this last night, unfortunately, when he passed away, just how the impact he had, just not in the Hoosier State, but beyond, and especially in the coaching ranks as well. And it was pretty evident today from the comments we've seen. Good evening to everybody. You know, many people who either played for or worked under Bob Knight became head coaches themselves. Those included legendary Duke head coach Mike Krzyzewski and current IU head basketball coach Mike Woodson. But Knight's impact on the profession goes beyond those who worked and played for him. He also had a big influence on other basketball coaches, those who coached against him and even those who didn't. There seems to be a lot of Knight's coaching philosophy still in the game even today. One of those coaches who was influenced by the General is current Purdue head basketball coach Matt Painter. He played against Knight's teams when he was a player for the Boilermakers in the early 90s. And he said even though they were arch rivals, Knight's effect on the game was massive.
That's what great coaches and great competition does. It makes other programs better, and I think he brought the best out of everybody in this league nationally, and that was the standard. They were the standard, and I think Coach Katie would totally agree with that in terms of having somebody that you have to constantly beat, whether it's in recruiting, whether they're in games, whether it's trying to win the Big Ten championship, whatever it might be.
Pat Knight is scouts for us, for the Pacers. He's a great friend. Bob Knight is, there's no greater iconic legend in Indiana basketball history than him. And so we send our thoughts and prayers out to the Knight family.
That's Pacers head coach Rick Carlisle. Heavy hearts there with the Pacers organization as well. They had a game last night in Boston, but obviously got the word of the passing of Coach Knight, and they were thinking about him throughout the game.
And AC, I know you've heard from a lot of people today remembering the coach. What are some of the memories that they're sharing with you?
I think it goes back to what these coaches have said. Just, the stamp, the impact he had on the game of basketball, and especially here in the Hoosier State. I mean, you grew up here. You knew about IU basketball because of Bob Knight and what he did for that program there, and just the excitement he brought this program, the excitement he brought to the Hoosier State. I mean, the fact that they were 24 straight NCAA tournament appearances. When you talk about March Madness, they were there. 3 national championships that he guided the Hoosiers to, and still today the only unbeaten team, the last unbeaten team that is. Still now in 1976. So, I mean, there is no doubt he will always have a place with the Indiana University basketball program.
And you did grow up here. I did too. And we both well know that excitement was felt whether you were on possibly the opposite side of loving him. From the media perspective, though, of course, covering Indiana sports for all your years, and this man was revered and feared in the media. Oh yeah. We told some stories last night. I remember there was plenty of times where he literally just went off on me for screaming at me for a bad question that I asked down there in Bloomington. But here's how you know how big time and just how the significance of Bob Knight when it comes to the state of Indiana, and especially when you're dealing with the media. As you see at the lower part of the screen there, we like to call that lower third, or we like to call it super as an indicator of who's speaking. So if we're talking to a Colts player, you'll see the name at the bottom of the screen. When Bob Knight was coaching Indiana, there were 2 players, at least according to the Wish TV policies here, that 2 people that you do not super or put the lower third there. And number 1 was the president at the time, and number 2 was Bob Knight, because you had no problem identifying who that individual was. And that in itself, it doesn't speak of how invaluable and just, the significance of him and just how much he affected this community, how many people knew him. Seriously. That right there, living proof. I worked in TV forever, and I've always known the president. That was the first time I'd heard that Bob Knight was considered that way here. Yeah. That's great.
Great story, AC. Thank you so much for the perspective.
Of course, you can find much more of our extensive coverage of Coach Knight's passing on our website. You can grab your phone right now and scan this QR code that's on your screen. It will take you to the As Seen On section of WishTV.com. There are multiple stories and a photo gallery there of Bob Knight from over the years.